Back to work. Thousands of striking Canada Post employees have been ordered back on the job following a ruling by the country's Labour Board. And
Unfortunately, this was the path of the slide and this home was completely destroyed, so it's gone.
the body of one of the residents whose home was hit by a landslide Saturday has been recovered by rescue crews. RCMP say the search continues for a second person who remains unaccounted for.
It missed us by maybe 100 feet.
Plus,
almost all the IPALS programs that I heard of have either had a 100% reduction or a 50% reduction in their funding.
critical support programs for newcomers are facing funding cuts. Why it's concerning for immigrants and refugees who already call Canada home. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. We begin with breaking news. Thousands of striking Canada Post workers are being ordered back on the job as of 8 o'clock Tuesday morning. It comes after 2 days of negotiations at hearings by the country's Labour Board. Canada Post says the Canada Industrial Relations Board issued a ruling today that the two sides are at an impasse. Last week, the federal Labour Minister said if the board determined there was an impasse, it would order union members back to work under the existing collective agreement until May 22nd of next year. Canada Post says it has agreed with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers to implement a 5% wage increase, less than what the union had previously been asking for. Union members have been on strike for exactly 1 month during the critical pre-holiday period, shutting down Canada Post operations. As of right now, the corporation says it is expecting workers back on the job in less than 48 hours at 8 a.m. local time Tuesday. Traffic is once again moving along the Sea to Sky Highway after a violent windstorm swept through and triggered a landslide yesterday. The same storm downed trees and power lines and left hundreds of thousands of people without power. The weather system is being blamed for at least 2 deaths, including one resident whose home was swept away in the landslide. Yvette Bren now with the rescue efforts to help those who survived.
A crucial link between Vancouver and Whistler now restored. The Sea to Sky Highway reopened after a landslide shut it down.
Terrifying. It doesn't feel real. When it was coming through, the thoughts going through my head are helplessness, because you can hear it coming and you can't see it.
Reese Rigglehoff lives in the path. She heard a roaring and trees snapping. She wanted to run.
What the residents heard was this. The entire mountain came down the hillside onto this highway.
Lions Bay resident Sarah McGuire describes the chaos.
Carnage, really. The barriers were all over the road. There was just debris everywhere. Taller than the building here, I guess. I don't know, it was huge.
The slide knocked at least one house off its foundation.
Unfortunately, this was the path of the slide and this home was completely destroyed, so it's gone.
Others were left stranded overnight. These two were among 9 people rescuers helped hike out with their dogs and this cat, Toby.
They had devised a trail with a series of ropes, so we climbed down and Toby made it.
Elation mixed with the realization of what could have happened.
It missed us by maybe 100 feet. I was actually trying to leave the house. Spencer was trying to keep me in the house. He's like, this is the safest place for us right now.
It happened at the height of a damaging rainstorm with winds gusting up to 115 kilometers per hour. Some 300,000 people lost power. In South Surrey, a woman died when she was hit by a falling branch.
We were called by EHS sort of mid-morning for a woman who had very tragically been struck by a falling part of a tree.
It took crews some 19 hours to remove the debris, but by early Sunday, the Sea to Sky Highway was cleared. Officials say it's safe, that further slides are unlikely. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
Family and political leaders were among those who gathered to pay tribute to former BC Premier John Horgan, who died last month at the age of 65. The CBC's Katie DeRosa was there as speakers remembered a politician respected across party lines and deeply loved by those who knew him best.
2,500 people gathered outside Victoria to say goodbye to John Horgan, former BC Premier, a mentor, and a father.
Take some strength holding my hand.
Tributes from his two sons, tinged with grief.
I'll see your hand make the salute to prosper and live long.
He was any number of things to any number of people. To Nate and I, he was never anything more than just Dad.
Family were joined by friends, former colleagues, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, all celebrating the life of BC's longest-serving NDP Premier.
That was John. Quick-witted, brilliant, but unflinching in his values and beliefs.
After stepping down as Premier, Horgan was tapped by Trudeau to be Canada's ambassador to Germany.
Man, he left politics more popular than when he entered.
In the crowd were not just political allies, but also former rivals.
Premier Dad, the People's Premier, and John from Langford became his monikers. He was one of the most popular premiers we've ever seen, respected and loved by people across the political spectrum.
Up on stage, symbols of Horgan's devotion to sports, science fiction, and his Irish heritage.
John would never pass up an opportunity to mention that he was Irish.
Horgan died at age 65, just over a month ago, following his third bout with cancer. His loss was sudden.
I had 34 happy years with my dad, but I thought I'd get 34 more.
Horgan's final message for BC, told to the crowd by his son.
And he said, just tell everyone I did my level best. I love my dad very much, and the world feels emptier without him in it.
Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Colwood, BC.
Early voting has wrapped up for the Cloverdale-Langley City by-election. The federal by-election was called in the riding after former Liberal MP John Aldag resigned to run for the NDP in this year's provincial election. There are 6 candidates running in the riding. Residents who have not yet cast their ballots can do so on Election Day on Monday, December 16th. A number of programs supporting immigrant and refugees in BC are losing federal funding as Ottawa moves to decrease overall immigration in the coming years. But as Saurabh Sandhu reports, some worry this means newcomers who already live in Canada will fall through the cracks.
Tracy Defoe is with Dakota Literacy Solutions Society, an organization that offers an English language support program for new immigrant parents. The program has been funded by federal grants for the past decade, but Defoe says now they have learned they will no longer be receiving that money.
We were pretty shocked.
She says the program helps teach literacy skills to refugees and immigrants who already live in Canada.
We also, in that program, teach and encourage people to read English children's books with their children. Parents who read to their kids once or twice a week just reinforce the importance of education and also, build relationship.
And it's not the only program like this to lose funding. CBC News is aware of at least 2 other newcomer programs in BC that are facing cuts.
Almost all the IPALS programs that I heard of have either had a 100% reduction or a 50% reduction in their funding for the coming 2 years.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says the resources available for settlement services depend on the number of newcomers expected to arrive, and they are expecting fewer in the coming years.
When you're bringing in a professional, say a doctor or engineer, and their family may not necessarily be fluent in English. And that's a situation that most of the families face.
Chima says Ottawa is also making changes to federal contracts that support settlement programs.
We just found out that they said, no, it won't be a 5-year contract. We are going to negotiate a 3-year contract with you.
The federal government says it will invest roughly $1.2 billion to support settlement needs of newcomers over next year and a half, with BC seeing about 155 million. Next year, the number of newcomers issued permanent resident status will go from 500,000 to 395,000. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Vancouver Whitecaps are up for grabs, and that has many soccer fans concerned about the future of the club and whether the sale would mean relocating the team. Michelle Gomez has more.
As the owners of Vancouver Soccer Club prepare to sell, fans have mixed feelings.
That's kind of our hope. Like whoever comes in will put in the effort and the money to grow this team into a competitor.
For Peter Zimmerman, the Whitecaps are more than just a soccer team. It's his community. Zimmerman attends every Whitecaps home game he can and most away games too.
I just hope they are the best kind of them and they are thoughtful of what they are actually purchasing, because it's not just a franchise in a league. It's really as a soccer community's team in a good city.
While he's hopeful new owners will put more resources into the team, he and other fans are worried new leadership could mean the team leaving the city.
It's basically the worst thing possibly could happen to the Vancouver soccer community.
While no promises have been made, the club's CEO says it's a priority for the owners to find a buyer who is committed to keeping the team in Vancouver.
We all want this club to do better every year. We all want to do the next step. We are ambitious, we put the bar high, and now we have another avenue, we have another potential to unlock where we can get additional new energy to do even better.
The team became part of Major League Soccer in 2011, 3 years after Steve Luxo, Jeff Mallett, and former NBA star Steve Nash joined Greg Kerfoot in owning the club. No asking price has been publicly released, but according to Forbes, the club was worth approximately $583 million last year.
Billionaires with that sort of willingness and passion and desire don't grow on trees. And nor does the money that comes from these Major League Soccer franchises.
MLS play-by-play commentator Blake Price says finding a buyer may not be easy, as the Whitecaps do not own a stadium or many assets.
But it will likely be a short list of suitors that will be interested in it, and I just hope that somebody local or that wants to keep it local will ultimately step up.
Fans remain determined to make sure the team stays local.
And I really hope that will be like the club and the ownership will be transparent with this process so we can raise our voices when need be.
Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Search, rescue, and detection canines of BC are adding in a new training tool, a smell wall, to help dogs learn how to better help with searches and cold cases.
This is the start of our scent wall. We're going to have 5 more panels like this. Forces them what we want them to do, and it's a big game to them, and it just keeps their drive up. And for this type of work you want a high drive dog, and so when they get to play on this, they really like it.
He says inside each hole is a ball with a scent they want to train their dog on, like narcotics or human remains. The dog needs to find the hole, stick its nose into the hole, and bark. He believes the smell wall will be a great resource to train future search dogs. Still ahead, Canadian premiers have gathered to discuss ways to respond to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat, but they are divided on how to respond. That's next. Stay with us. CBC News has learned Housing Minister Sean Fraser is stepping down. The official announcement is expected tomorrow. Sources say he'll be leaving cabinet in an impending shuffle and will not run in the next election. They say family reasons prompted the decision. Fraser has represented the riding of Central Nova since 2015. Canada's premiers are meeting with one topic overshadowing everything else: Donald Trump's tariff threat. The CBC's Olivia Stefanovich reports on what the premiers are saying so far.
Provincial and territorial leaders off to dinner with smiles.
Well, it's great to have all the premiers here in town.
But on the menu, tough talk and tougher choices over what to do about U.S. threats to the Canadian economy.
We have to make sure that we have a position of strength, not a position of weakness.
Premiers are meeting for the first time in person since Donald Trump warned of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods unless security at the border is tightened.
We have to be ready. We really have to be ready and ensure that as Canadians that we're united.
But they don't all agree on the same approach. Ontario taking a hard line, threatening to cut energy exports to the U.S. BC warns it could do the same.
The province of Ontario and the country must be ready with a robust suite of actions to respond.
Others caution against countermeasures.
I don't think a trade war is good for Canada. It's not good for the United States.
Some even calling for an early federal election.
That's part of the reason why we don't have a coherent strategy when it comes to trade, because you need to have a government that can say, I'm here for the next 4 years. You got to deal with me.
New Brunswick's new Liberal premier says heading to the polls before Trump's inauguration would be a bad idea.
Certainly, if I were the coach of the team, it wouldn't be the time to change the captain when you're going into Game 7.
With the sticking points threatening to cause further divisions, this premier is urging his colleagues to stay focused on what's best for Team Canada.
I have full faith in terms of our ability to share and debate those differences. But at the end, we're all here to have a better country, to really do what we can as premiers to come together, especially during the hardest of times.
There's also talk of more ads, with New Brunswick's premier saying she's in talk with the federal government on developing a national message that can be played to Americans so as many people in the U.S. hear about Canada's position. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
The government issues its fall economic statement tomorrow. It's believed it's been drafted with an eye firmly on the incoming administration in Washington. Analysts here in Canada will have their eyes on the projections around the deficit. The CBC's JP Tasker reports.
The federal government sees trouble on the horizon for the Canadian economy.
I really want to underscore for Canadians the fact that we are living in challenging times.
The unemployment rate has just ticked up to nearly 7%, its highest level in years.
Tariff!
And President-elect Donald Trump's tariffs have the potential to throw Canada's economy into a tailspin. All of this as Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland prepares to present a fiscal update on Monday.
I believe, particularly now, at a time of significant national peril, other parties in Parliament should not be looking at these measures as something partisan.
Government sources say those measures will include a new program to jumpstart economic growth and fight back against Trump's America First agenda, which could pull investment out of Canada. All of it will be costly, sources say, and Freeland's promise to keep the deficit at $40 billion or less won't be met.
Things are not great, and there are lots of threats coming at us, especially obviously from the U.S.
This former Liberal advisor says the government has mismanaged the country's finances.
And that's what I'm seeing right now. A government that's really lost control of its spending, and a government that is losing control of its fiscal framework.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the country can handle a bigger deficit.
Stop. Just stop. Stop adding inflationary spending that balloons the cost of living.
But sources say there's a big ticket item coming that might garner some conservative support. a $1 billion border package to appease Trump and his concerns about drugs and migrants.
An increase in technology in that space would certainly be helpful for us.
Government sources say this mini budget would have looked a lot different if Trump hadn't won. Much of it was sketched out after his victory in November. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Here we have a live shot of Burrard Inlet towards the North Shore and a very nice clear night. I'll have your full forecast coming up next. All right, it is time now to take a look at our forecast for the week ahead. Let's begin with a quick look at the current temperatures around the province right now. -23 in Dease Lake, -9 in Prince George overnight, and a low of 3 and rainy in both Tofino and Victoria. Into tomorrow, -20 for Fort St. John with a mix of sun and clouds. A lot more snow action in Kamloops with a -1. Similar conditions in Kelowna, and -2 rather in Whistler for tomorrow. And on the island, we're going to see temperatures around that 8 and 7 degree mark with a lot of rain. Similar conditions here in Metro Vancouver. 5 is our high for tomorrow, and that looks to be continuing for the remainder of the week. UBC has an in-house glassblower to make equipment for all kinds of chemical experiments. But as Tanushi Batnar shows us, he also uses his skills for something deeply personal.
It's the best job on campus.
Underneath UBC's chemistry building is a maze of labs. It's right here where Brian Ditchburn makes glass equipment. But it's more than just test tubes and flasks. He also makes and sells some very unique mugs. Ditchburn began crafting them more than 25 years ago, but it became more personal after his daughter died from an intractable seizure disorder. He first gifted the mugs to nurses at the BC Children's Hospital, where Kaylin was treated.
I spent a lot of time at Children's trying to sort out where it was going.
Now, 10 years after Kaylin's death, he donates the proceeds from those mugs to the hospital as a thank you.
I collect the money and I say, what am I going to do with this money? Because I don't need it. So I thought Children's Hospital.
To make a mug, Ditchburn takes a pre-made beaker, melts a glass handle, and attaches it to the surface. He then heats the whole thing to fuse it together.
One beaker.
And sells them for around $10.
That's word of mouth. Grad students will come by and grab some. They'll tell someone else. And suddenly they'll be knocking on my door asking for them. Right? And now you have to cut that off.
Ditchburn also offers glass ornament making workshops as a raffle prize. It's part of the Chemistry Student Society's efforts to raise money for charities. This year, UBC staff member Carrie Ocean was one of the winners.
I've been able to make a lot of icicles for friends and family and started sharing them.
Beyond the beakers and tubes, Brian encourages people who want to buy a mug or learn how to make a trinket to drop by. A labor of love for a hospital and a daughter.
Supporting that facility is important because if you're in that boat and you don't have anybody to help you, that'd be horrible.
Tanushi Bhatnagar, CBC News, Vancouver.
That is your late news for Sunday, December 15th. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. To keep up to date with all the latest news, visit our website at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Hope you have a great week.